Yes, this is Let's Talk Call-In Radio, where we try to get to the root of modern-day problems.
We do get to the root of
philosophical
them.
discussions. And,
We don't just try.
But really, yeah, I'm trying.
Well, Let's Talk on KWMR. We encourage you to call in to give us your point of view. I remember this bit of the script that I don't actually have in front of me because I so profoundly disapprove of it, which is without judgment. Call us. We give it to you without judgment. And be sure to be careful with your language.
Yes, please, keep it clean. So call 415-663-8492 or 8317 if 8492 happens to be busy. Give us your thoughts about...
What is it,
Stephen?
Cultural appropriation.
Oh, let me just say that in the studio today, Stephen Hurwitz, who is leading the discussion today, Charles Schultz, and myself, Paul Riffel.
Thank you, Paul.
You know, I never even thought about cultural appropriation until I read an article where two women in Portland, Oregon had opened a,
burrito. It was a burrito place.
truck, yeah. And they essentially, the community forced them out of business because they said they had appropriated recipes from little old ladies down in Mexico.
Yeah.
And this wasn't fair, I guess.
I see. Okay. So how did you fall on that argument? What did you think?
Where do I think?
Yeah.
Well, I'm so confused. I just didn't have any thoughts about it at all.
Well,
I thought it was ridiculous.
This is why we need people to call in. 415-663-8492.
I think it's reached a point of absurdity.
Well, and at what point is it something appreciation? At what point is it something else? But, isn't a burrito fall into the category of what's called Tex-Mex? That this is something that is a mélange of different traditions to begin with?
Well, they established their credibility by telling people that they snuck around and they
went down to Tulum.
Yeah, they learned.
It's always Tulum.
They learned how to make this special recipe through stealth.
Oh, they actually stole it?
Well, I know. I don't think it was. I think they observed it. But I would wonder how much of this was they were shamed on social media and with their actual protesters, or is it just people saying "How dare you" over the internet?
Nobody came and
there were no demonstrations.
Boycotted their taco truck.
Being from the wonderful country of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Not Ireland itself, unfortunately, because they're just troublemakers. But we did appropriate Irish traditions, and curry. I mean,
not Irish.
Wherever we were, we appropriated the things that we liked from our colonies.
And a fine job you did it too.
Well, see, I don't think food counts. I think
pizza.
Yeah, I think they were
deep-fried pizza in Scotland now.
Well, they would talk about the Columbian exchange, right? Potatoes, tomatoes, pumpkins, all these things became staples of European diets that come from the New World.
Tobacco.
Oh, indeed.
But that's not really where the issue comes up. I think the issue comes up when number one, you have a well-known person who appropriates something that is which it's integral to someone's culture and uses it to make money, essentially. Like the Kardashian sisters, the young ones. I guess the whole family's getting involved now.
What do they use?
They printed T-shirts using hip hop artists, and then over the print of the hip hop artists, they put their pictures.
Over a quotation or their image?
Photograph, over the photographs. And they printed their own, and then they of their own pictures.
They are pretty.
They charge $125.
That's the real crime. No, I mean it is vulgar, but I wonder, if we don't miss the point by the problem is you use that picture. Not what is this insane? What are the other dimensions of this insane world that we live in? But I like the character of the imperial pervert. I can give you an example from the United Kingdom, although he would have invariably said England and meant it to refer to the whole.
Everything.
And in fact, the Oxford Dictionary of the English, or Oxford, Encyclopedia of the English People, or Oxford History of the English People.
Yeah, right.
It means the United Kingdom.
And the colonies.
So there you go. They must have changed that by now, but that was true even 10 years ago, I think.
Yeah, you say England, you mean old Britain, but then, then the Scots and the Welsh got uppity.
Well, my favorite example of this is, and you should call 415-663-8492 to talk about cultural appropriation. But it was Enoch Powell. Now, Enoch Powell is maybe not so famous in the United States, but he's famous in England. He's a politician who made an inflammatory speech in the late 1960s saying that immigration, he was particularly talking about black Caribbeans, but from other parts of the empire to England was going to rip apart English society, its culture, etc. And it was known from a quote from Virgil that he includes in the speech as the Rivers of Blood speech. And that's always the one little fact everybody knows about Enoch Powell. He didn't like immigration, was a bigot, etc. Fascinating reality of somebody like that was he, at the end of the Second World War, had been stationed in Calcutta, and he fell in love with India immediately. And he used to talk about India in the most amazing ways. He taught himself Hindi. He taught himself Urdu. He was a great linguist. He actually wrote his own lexicon because he was a scholar and professor of ancient Greek. But he didn't see this as inconsistent at all. He thought
as long as they stay over there.
As long as they stay over there. That his love for India was just like beautiful and pure. But Indian people shouldn't be in England, right? They should be in India.
Even though they had British passports.
Yeah, indeed. So, I mean, it's just this really weird thing that we do, that we have this huge admiration for the other culture, but that somehow doesn't lead to a politics or some kind of gestalt where you say, oh, we're part of one world or this thing. It doesn't lead to brotherly love. It could just be, your fascination with another culture. Right. It might have nothing. It might not change your politics at all. In fact, I don't think it does.
Well, somehow I think the entire world has appropriated American culture.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
well, so now let's talk about American culture, American music. Where did the rhythms and even some of the instruments
Ireland
come
I believe,
from?
Is what we were talking about.
No.
You're supposed
to say
Africa.
There would not be jazz. There would not be
beautiful Irish jazz.
There would not be your favorite British guy swinging away.
He's a South African, actually.
South African, yeah. If it hadn't been for the slaves that came to America and had their music and African rhythms that turned into jazz, turned into modern music for, 200 years now?
I think it's a blessing that we have these
Yes,
things.
exactly. But the problem is, or was, and probably still is, that the black musicians didn't make anything of it. Along comes Elvis, then got a nice white boy to sing these songs, and suddenly he's a star, and the guys who actually wrote the songs or who performed them much better than he ever did got nothing, or they were basically discriminated against, couldn't play anywhere that wasn't a black venue. Coloreds only.
I wonder, again, like with Powell, if it doesn't disguise the larger problems. The problem was that Enoch Powell liked Indian culture. The problem was that he had this really narrow view of narrow view. That's probably being pretty polite. He had this view about immigration that was extremely hostile, and he thought that his culture should remain intact and protected. But that didn't change the fact that he really did genuinely love India. And I think we have the same problem today, is that, their appreciation for all kinds of different cultures, which enriches our lives. I mean, I think this is what we think about as the good part of globalization, which is our exposure to different cultures, et cetera. But that love and admiration of those things, it doesn't mean that, that leads to a kind of politics that is a more peaceful, interested in a greater equality, interested in, a better world, to use a lot of platitudes there and kind of empty slogans. So they're just not related. You could really, really like Indian food and really, really hate Indian people.
See Indians in your neighborhood, and yes.
Well, that's it. I mean, if you had 10,000 poor, people from Southeast Asia move to Inverness, it may materially change the attitude of those people toward the parts of the culture they like to appropriate. But I would say this is
the Buddhism and
the statues,
the yoga and the meditation.
Yeah, all of a sudden, the admiration and the reality of, say, the actual physical presence of the other would create a tension. I don't know what the result of that tension would be, but I think it would change. So we experience this displacement. We're not immigrants any longer, having to flee our homes. We experience it as the good life, which means you fly to those places and check them out. But speaking of that, I had a neighbor just came back from Bali. He said, there's a McDonald's. There was a McDonald's in Bali.
Oh, sure.
And there's a McDonald's at Dachau. I like that. That's a good one.
At Dachau.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
No.
Yeah. To be fair, it's at the S-Bahn station, but in my memory, there's one on either side of the platform. So it doesn't matter if you're coming or going to Dachau, you can get McDonald's.
Well, I just wonder, it seems like the accusations are generally towards whites.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And Jews, including Jews, of course.
You mean that you've
Jew-boos?
appropriated
I mean,
Jewish
there's actually
culture?
a word, Jew-boos, right? Because there's
Jewish
so many
Buddhists.
Jewish people who are, lost their faith and are looking for something else, and they all converted to Buddhism. I mean, let's start with
Really?
Jack Kornfield.
Boy, good old Jack. Or Richard Baker. Isn't he great? Baker Roshi, to some of you. He actually wore the robe. See, most people don't wear the robes, so they can sort of get away with it. If you actually wear the robe, it's something. But after all, and if you go to his Wikipedia page, this is Green Gulch Farms.
Well,
If
my day they wore the robes.
they should still do that. Don't you remember Hare Krishnas? Didn't you
That's
love it when Hare Krishnas came to
exactly.
town? They danced, they sang. I miss that. Now they
So is
don't.
anyone appropriating the Jewish religion at all?
All over the place.
Yeah,
Our
really?
language,
Really?
Yiddish.
Oh, I see. But what
Kibbutz.
is
Do you
it?
kibbutz?
Well, wait,
do
so
you
that's
kvetch?
just New York slang, right? I mean, this is
But isn't Yiddish German appropriation
Yes,
by Jewish
exactly.
people? They
It
appropriated
is.
the
It's
German
just
language.
a really bad accent.
Oh, we have
It's
a
a
call.
dialect, I would say. It's more a dialect.
I wonder.
It's not appropriation.
We have a caller. Hi, caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please? Please keep your language clean.
I know about my language.
Oh, what is your language?
My language is appropriated from other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
No, my name is Sally, and I want to give a little pushback about Jewish people who lost their faith. That is not necessarily a correct characterization
Thank
of
you.
the Jew-boo.
What is
Got your
the
back, Stevie. Got your back.
what is the correct characterization?
Well, I mean, that may be in some cases the truth, depending on the experience of the individual person who was raised in the Jewish faith. I see that there has been found a common ground or a lot of crossover between Judaism and Buddhism, and that is very appealing to many Jewish people who are Buddhist to some level, either mild or extreme level. I think the thing about Judaism, of course, now this is a religious conversation, and I don't want to derail your whole deal there.
No.
That's what I'm
Go
hearing.
for it.
That heaven is on earth. This is our life. We don't go to heaven. We don't go to hell. That's just a boatload of hooey. And
Careful now.
so for me, notice how I said hooey. Carefully chose that word. Anyway, maybe the thing about Buddhism is that there's reincarnation. And as a Jewish person that I am, who likes certain things about Buddhism, I always have trouble with the reincarnation part. Like, really, come on, isn't that a little silly? I mean, we get one shot here. There's an infinite number of souls that get to have their chance in the sun here. But that's just my belief. I'm just saying, I just wanted to defend the Jew-boos.
Well, I have no issue with it.
No, I'm just saying that I think it was not necessarily correct to say that they've lost their faith.
Oh, well,
and
okay.
I think that Judaism and Buddhism there's a quality of an interactive quality, interfacing of those two that's very appealing to the Jewish culture and faith. That's all I wanted to say
I
about that.
wonder where the interface is, though, really. I mean...
Oh, well, I can give you an
In
example.
one, there's the angry God and the angry father
I think
God.
in Judaism, in Jewish culture, there's a sort of a bittersweet, an acknowledgement of the bittersweet, of the lamentation, of the, we accept these things that happen, but we lament, or loss and change. And because there is no heaven or hell, the loss is really felt. And in Buddhism is all about letting go, change, the inevitability of change and of letting go. And I think that's the big crossover there.
But without the reincarnation bit.
Well, do all Buddhists believe in reincarnation? I thought you could attain nirvana and then you sort of break the cycle of reincarnation.
I think there's, whatever. I mean,
well, there's so many different Buddhist traditions too. I mean,
Buddhism
huge.
is about letting go and leaving that back there, and that's what the meditative practice in part is all about. And anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
That was a dime.
Thank you. Oh, well,
that was $1.50.
And Stevie and Sally, Judaism representing.
Thank you so much, Sally. Well, there are other crossovers. I mean, the reason that Tibetan Buddhism is so popular, I think, amongst Christians and Jews is because it contains a Messiah figure, the Bodhisattva, who comes back to Earth to save the people. So there are lots of crossovers there. But yeah, I think that I've always sort of found that kind of detachment to be it's somewhat, I would say, even pernicious in a culture whose ideal, on some level, is the citizen participation in self-governance and governing ourselves. So it's a get-out-of-jail-free card for whatever. So is it
Buddhism in a capitalist society, in a capitalist context? Becomes it becomes a way of saying, hey.
Well, what if you have Buddhist politicians? I asked somebody about Jerry Brown once. I said, "What's he like?" And he said, "Oh, Jerry's a Catholic Buddhist." I said, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "Well, the Catholic is the fall of man is very pessimistic. He can see all of the problems of the world and describe them in great detail, and the Buddhist just doesn't care."
This brings up the issue of assimilation.
Yeah.
And I think, part of this appropriation is actually assimilation.
Yeah, where's the line on that? That's really the big question.
Well, there's a phrase.
Assimilation of values, of rights,
or just plain
practices.
drag,
styles.
I think
dress
fashion
styles,
was
fashion.
mostly. Well, but this phrase was coined on KWMR. Call in 663-8492. I looked it up. According to Google, so there may be better sources. The phrase liminal fetishism is only has 6 results on Google. All of them are associated with its use on KWMR by Paul Fenn, and then I appropriated it from Paul Fenn. I used it. And I think it's an important concept in this sense, liminal in the sense of to limit the space between one culture and another in our time. And the fetishism quality of it being what I see of as a taking. I don't encounter people that say, these are the concepts in Buddhism that I find to be particularly enlightening and how they inform my life. People say, I am a Buddhist. Now that's fetishistic. That's looking into someone else's culture, and rather than being enriched by it with some kind of respect, it's a grabbing. And so I wrote a piece. I've written endless pieces about this for the local papers. They're all long gone hamster bedding that has now been thrown away. But one of the things about it was I was at the Perry's in Inverness Park. And I was listening to a conversation between 2 people about a huge Balinese head. It's a head of some Buddha, some god, that they had hauled over here to put in somebody's back garden. And to me, when you think about, say, just the history of the United States in Asia and the Buddhist parts of Asia, it takes a special kind of chutzpah, you might say.
Oh, where did that come from?
We don't know. We're not sure. It takes a
somebody grabbed that.
Somebody did to then go and picking through the wreckage that we've left there and the dead bodies to grab their religion and take it back here and put it in our back garden, as though this was an act of enlightenment, instead of, I think, a hysterical desire to be forgiven for our activity. I don't know what that is. It's very strange to me.
When you use the word grab, I think that really narrows it down.
So the Elgin marbles, the the Tutankhamun exhibit, all the relics of all those archaeological relics
People
the
made
colonials, that the imperialists said, oh, we can take care of these better than these.
They made the same argument to me when I made that objection about stealing the Balinese heads. They said, well, we will preserve them. Oh, very nice. But this is displacement, too. It's a different kind of displacement. We don't want symbols that refer to the ugly parts of our past. And so we'd like to have a whole sort of a field of view in our lives, and also internally when we think of our ideas that do not refer to our past as Europeans, that refer to somebody else's past, and thereby free us of the burden of having a past at all. It's a really difficult thing. I mean, I'd say I understand why people want to be free of their past, but it gets complicated. I think it's a pretty serious problem.
I was just lying in bed thinking about myself. How do I free myself from my past?
If I could remember it.
Yes, that's one way of forgetting. Well, it's a really weird thing. So, on the one hand, my life has been hugely enriched by contact with other cultures. On the other hand, I have trouble with the fetishization of those cultures, as though you could transform yourself by grabbing somebody else's outfit, putting on my new hat.
But that's fine if you want to decide those things for yourself. But what happens? You've got this thought police out there that roam around and decide who's appropriated and who hasn't.
Right. Well, so again, we're back to what is the line between assimilation and appropriation and melding of cultures. I mean, this is a melting pot of a country. We like to think so, anyway. And it's inevitable, isn't it, that these things bleed over into each other. But I think the Native Americans, for example, have a point when they see Victoria's Secret models wearing their bald eagle headdresses.
Well, it's that same kind of thing. I mean, if after the war, surviving members of the SS and their children started a big movement in Germany around Judaism because it centered them, because it made them more mindful, we would know exactly what was going on. Somehow we do that to Vietnamese religion or Japanese religion, and we put on the drag and we say, I'm so centered, I'm so mindful. It increases my empathy for the people who I encounter who are rich like me and don't need anything either. It's shameful.
That's where the line is.
Yeah, it's really shameful.
Well, Victoria's Secret, if they were wearing cowboy hats and had, pistols on,
it's American.
I see.
Except the cowboy hats, of course, could be said to be an appropriation of the Mexican sombrero. But,
except those cowboys were mostly black.
Well, there's an activist, and I don't know what tribe they're from, so I would hesitate to say Native American activist, because he hated this. He said he liked Indian much better, because Native American, what? You're cultural Americans, and I'm part of nature. I'm just like a deer. I like Indian better because at least it's a testament to the stupidity of the white man.
What if you're appropriating a myth? The cowboy was really created for the silver screen. So, how about there are myths out there that you could can you appropriate something that is a myth?
Well, we do.
I guess so.
That isn't really true for any culture. They just make a claim to it.
I guess, but I mean, here's an even weirder one. I've been thinking about, by the way, 663-8492. We're talking about cultural appropriation.
Tell us we're all wrong.
Indeed.
You're all wrong.
Somebody please call in and tell us.
You.
The figure of Tiresias, who of course occurs famously in Oedipus Rex and then occurs in T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, he, in Greek mythology, was always sort of hermaphroditic. He had sexual characteristics of men and women, and that was just understood to be part of his power. Because he had the power of both worlds, he could see things that people who were just male or just female could not see.
About the figure of Jesus Christ, if you don't mind my saying.
The
appropriation of Mithras or whatever it was, going back and back and back.
You have to wonder how conscious it is. But yes, I think the gospel writers were trying to embed
divine conception, sun god, the son of God.
Well, fertility cults, birth, death, rebirth.
Died to save his people.
Sure.
I mean, it's
you can go
about cultural appropriation.
Well, I mean, you can. Osiris in some traditions has 12 apostles and 72 disciples, right? I mean, so that's true. But you can think of in a kind of syncretic way, it was happening in a positive way. Also, then a negative way is that people were grabbing onto the things that they liked about the Jesus myth and bringing them into their tradition. And the real story in terms of how that developed, and this is in Jesse Weston's From Ritual to Romance, another reference obliquely to T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which describes when the church becomes established in Rome as a state religion, it goes around and crushes all of these other you could call them alternate interpretations or uses or appropriations of Jesus. Now, there's only one version that can be allowed. So, but what I was saying about Tiresias is that power of being of claiming the power of the other is a really interesting problem. So, this woman who wanted to be African American, so she tanned her skin and lived as an African American. Or on the other hand, Bruce Jenner, who wanted to be Caitlyn Jenner. I wonder if on some level it isn't
to be that.
Well, would be the claim, but I would say, is it that we desire the power of the other gender, the other sex, or the other race? And is this cultural appropriation about grabbing that power for ourselves?
Sure.
Because of its attraction.
The attractiveness of the other. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please? Keep it clean.
Hi, Paul. It's Hal at Marconi. How are you?
Hey, Hal.
Howdy, Hal.
Is that Charles?
It is indeed.
Charles.
You have a voice for radio, Charles.
And he uses it all the time.
Yeah.
I also have a face for this program. I have a big zit on my cheek, and I'm doing teenage appropriation. I'm appropriating a teenage skin here on KWMR. But anyway, Hal, please.
I'll be brief, so you're not going to have time to pop it.
Oh, you're on there.
You were getting to the I thought I'd chime in on this part. I was wondering what happens to that culture when we appropriate it. I mean, you talked a little bit about it. When we travel, we see the American culture and the commerce behind it affecting other places. I mean, Pepsi's been in Russia for 40 years, and it kind of brings us down. But we're a couple of white guys talking right now. Mm-hmm. There's isn't there kind of a gentrification that takes place?
Very interesting point.
Well, I think it loses meaning is what happens. I say it just takes...
Well, it changes it.
Well, changes but destroys. I mean, the idea for me of a religion, like any kind of culture that is classically conceived, it exists within a geographic space, a historical space, a space of language, the space of diet, the space of daily rituals in life, the way people survive. So the idea that you can grab a tradition that arises on the Tibetan plateau and box it up and move it to Des Moines misses the point. The other thing is what I'll call departicularization, which makes every place more like every other place. And I think what defined the encounter of different cultures, radically different cultures, was the difficulty it took to get from here to there. So now anybody can get into an aluminum tube and go see the McDonald's at Bali. The problem is the more people go, the more McDonald's are going to be there. The more the place you come from or the place you go will be like the place you come from.
Exactly, and then almost when you travel, the more people you see in that McDonald's, kind of the sadder you get. Mm-hmm. Because part of the reason why we're appropriating these cultures is, I don't know about you, but for me, growing up in the '60s, what's my culture? The Brady Bunch and Hostess Twinkies.
Yeah.
I'm ready to embrace something else that's interesting.
Well, there isn't.
Get me on a dance floor, except if I'm at a wedding where another culture is taking over, or different kinds of music. So I won't dance to disco.
Oh, well, Death Before Disco. You heard it here on KWMR. To me, again, it's America doesn't have traditions and, quote, culture. It does not have a culture like we think of as in the small regions around, say, Western Europe or even Eastern Europe, where most of us come from. So we've always been in drag a little bit.
Yeah.
How about architecture?
We have the pocketbook, though.
Yeah, that's the pocketbook.
Paul mentioned the blues.
Yeah.
Before, I mean, it slowly made its way up to the Mississippi to Chicago, and there was a business about it, but it wasn't until the '70s rockers from England appropriated it, and then the blues musicians had to kind of go back and sue them.
Right.
My favorite line here, Ginger Faker is here with us in the studio right there. Anyway, sorry, Paul has red hair.
Who was it that I know that Led Zeppelin got sued?
Oh, yeah. And, well, they should. And, nobody, all those early guys who inspired Elvis and more didn't get anything. Chuck Berry was a good businessman. He managed to do it. What it did do, though, on the other hand, I mean, the fact that Eric Clapton was playing blues gave rise to more success for, like, B.B. King, forgotten. I mean, Howlin'. I used to see Howlin' Wolf in England. I mean,
Muddy Waters.
Muddy
huge,
Waters, of course.
Huge,
But to get back to my original point, what happened to the blues? You suddenly put horn sections behind them, string sections behind them. It was no longer Robert Johnson and an acoustic guitar anymore.
Right. It became the white version of the blues, which became pop music, rock music, pop music.
Yeah, R&B.
But there's
all the rhythms are from that, and
there's a certain
the chord changes. I mean, it's all.
But music
classic.
is in a process of morphing. I mean, that's part of what.
I think it's getting more and more rigid because we're running through all the world music we can get our hands on. We've gone through the whole globe's back catalog and dug up all the ideas and smashed them all together again. And it doesn't mean it doesn't sound good. I should make that point. It doesn't mean it's not entertaining.
New things come out of that.
Well, remixes come out of that.
Well, but you know what it is, and I'm going to get off the phone after this, and let you guys go. But
derivative.
You remember in Star Trek when the whatever they were supposed to, when they landed, their mission statement was that we're not going to change the culture when we land, and of course they always
did. Yeah.
So I think we're Star Trekking anything we assimilate, whether it's cultural, musical, or anything, there is a gentrification, a Star Trekking that takes place.
So the question really is this bad? I mean, that's really what
it's just more complex even than that, because, again, it is not a desire for enlightenment. People aren't going into other cultures to learn something about themselves. They're going into other cultures to avoid the reckoning with ourselves. I mean, we are the people who are, colonizing the planet now and destroying the planet with our machines. And
well, that is our culture.
That is our culture. I agree.
But we treat that.
Off the phone and let somebody else on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hal.
Cheers.
Take care.
And that was 663-8492 to join the conversation about cultural appropriation.
Because, of course, this is KWMR, Point Reyes Station 90.5, Point Reyes Station 89.9, Bolinas 92.3 in San Geronimo Valley, streaming live on KWMR.org. And KWMR is supported by McPhail Fuel Company, a community business partner since 1884, providing fuel services for residential, commercial, and industrial use. More information at 415-285-3525 and on the web at mcphails.com. That's MCPHAILS.com. And support for programming is also provided by the California Film Institute, celebrating film and media as art, entertainment, and education at the Christopher B. Smith Raphael Film Center, the Mill Valley Film Festival, and through CFI education programs. Information at cafilm.org. Well, cultural appropriation. Yes, we're talking about cultural appropriation today. What's the line between appropriation and a healthy melding of cultures? Give us a call, 415-663-8492. Somebody is giving us a call. Hi, caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please?
My goodness.
Oh.
Well.
This is a great subject.
Appropriator-in-chief.
This is a great subject you chose. So, what if this is larger than all of this? What if all of the things that you've been talking about are components, and that we as humans have this basic need for storytelling and sharing? That's really like one of the most basic ways we communicate.
I think that, to me, it's just, you can do whatever you want with music, and I'm not just sucking up to our caller, who did not announce his name.
Exactly.
You can
Biff.
Fred.
You can call me Biff.
Biff Tannen. You can do whatever you want with music. You can do whatever you want with culture. The problem is when people confuse that for politics. When they confuse those questions about high art, medium, and low, with actually being an attempt to create good in the world, change the world in some meaningful political way. And so here's the problem: is that we think it would be political for somebody to take the outfit of a culture that they didn't grow up in. I think it's usually people just look silly, but it usually ends up kind of boring. But it's just not politics.
Well, but see, all of those things are the foibles of us humans, and that as it has always been.
Oh, the fallen world.
Well, we see bright, shiny things, and we want them. We want to try them out.
Stephen. All the way along.
I think there's this thing about it's like colonialism, though. We can go over to an African country and we can bring back their treasures, and we go over to these countries and bring back their culture in the same way. And I think that's the objection.
Yeah. Or force them to make replicas of what we like about their culture and give them to us for almost nothing.
A plea I've made many times on the air here.
Grow our food.
And hopefully lie and tell us it's original.
Google a white woman with African child. You will get pages after pages after pages of this. People going and posing with their little African child. And it is pretty hideous.
And to let you guys continue on, and I have a musical anecdote.
I
have a story. Way back, I was doing a session with a percussionist friend, very talented guy who'd been trained in Cuba, and he had this big, ganglia of beads around his neck that he wore proudly. And I didn't really understand what that was all about. I just dug his playing. He was great. And I was coming up with samples, it was the MIDI age, and I was coming up with all sorts of cool beats. And he took offense that, I was just taking a kind of drum sound that I like the sound of, but that drum actually was giving off either a religious or emotional component that was inherent in a culture. I didn't hear it as such. It was just a cool sound.
Well, what do you think about that, though? I mean, is that, or what about like Paul Simon and Graceland, right? You could go and like all those musicians he worked with, it's like, we didn't get that check.
It completely ties into your story about the Indian culture and his love for it, but I think it completely ties in. There's a component of ignorance in all of it, and my ignorance. But still, my willingness to dive in and learn about it, I mean, there's value in that. I think that, and again, I think it gets back to that basic thing. I wanted to tell a story using these beats, and I'm completely ignorant in the usage of them. And I was using them incorrectly, according to him. But I mean, if you take that thread and think about all the things you've talked about, there are many things about that storytelling, that apply there, I think.
Will you be able to comment on this, anonymous caller, Biff? You may or may not, if you don't want to comment on it, that's fine, have seen the side of this debate that I have not seen, and maybe Stephen and Paul haven't either, which is the pressure on African-American musicians to be authentically African-American, authentically black.
Oh, definitely.
And so, and if they try and do something that's too white, that this becomes a problem.
Well, yeah. I've seen it firsthand, and I think that it's unfair. It's unfair to the human being that's expressing themselves through their music, because they are a combination of their current life. So to put that on them, that they're not representing, in some way.
Biff, you brought up something interesting, though. So someone appropriates it, but they really screw it up. Not only do they appropriate it, but they don't even appropriate it correctly. So it becomes something trivialized rather than...
yeah, that's the whole point, isn't it?
Well, it depends
trivialize. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, no, that's the point.
Well, it depends what you want it to do, right? I mean, Paul Simon wanted to make some cool-sounding songs, so he made some cool-sounding songs. But it is totally disembedded from the relationship of music to religion, a language, an everyday pattern of life, a geography, of this or that or the other thing. It still sounds cool.
It's Katy Perry dressed as a geisha for her.
Is she really?
For the AMA Awards, you know.
Well, gracious.
I mean, and singing a song that had nothing to do with the costume she was wearing. In fact, the Japanese were very offended by the whole thing.
Yeah, I always
trivialization of it.
Also, Paul, to that though, there's if you spoke with her, I'm guessing there's an exuberance and a blissful ignorance about things. I don't think there's any, I think that ignorance is kind of at the heart of so much of it.
Well, because we actually have no idea in some of these cases, even down to dreadlocks and some of the foods like a poi or something, that there wasn't religious or spiritual significance to any of this. It's like appreciating nature and acting as if you're a Native American. Native Americans had a deep connection to the earth, whereas we live in our little boxes and then we go out into nature and say, "Oh, we're appreciating it."
We're not appreciating it.
It's a different level of involvement and spirituality.
It's drag. I mean, look, this is what the German elites did.
Well, it's an idea. It's sort of an extension
of nature, though. It's not something that Native Americans own.
Well, that's
but
let's get the rest of that res.
That's probably not a good example.
But I give you a better example. 19th century
on the stove.
Okay. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth. 19th century German elites, right? They liked to in the summer times go up to the mountains and wear lederhosen, which were peasant outfits, and pretend they were part of nature.
Talk about
they went
British
feral.
English tweeds.
They went peasant
as well, which was peasant garb. Hi, caller. You're on the air. What's your name, please?
It's Lions.
Yeah.
I will definitely watch my language.
Well,
please do.
I hope so.
You mentioned Paul Simon.
Uh-huh.
I assume it was Graceland.
I think so. I don't know.
Great album.
They had Lady Smith, Black Mambazo, all that.
I heard he ripped off the musicians. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I think it's Graceland with all the Lady Smith, Black Mambazo,
Yes, it is.
and other African musicians on. And somebody I knew at the time was horribly offended, a white man, horribly offended, thinking that Paul Simon was ripping off those African musicians. And my thought to that was, well, are you saying that those African musicians are so stupid or so naive that they allowed themselves to be ripped off? Maybe it was actually an even-Steven relationship. Maybe they went into it with their eyes open and they were happy to do it.
Wow.
It's like there was this implied remark about their intelligence or their naivete, which I thought was even more offensive.
Right, that's true.
And I just happened to hear somebody mentioning poi. One of my uncles was so sick when he was born, poi, it turned out, was the only thing he could eat.
Look at
for
that.
like the first 2 or 3 years of his life.
Excellent foods.
Why is it you're not going to fix problems within that layer of culture? And so I say, like whatever you want, but just don't assume that it has any larger significance. As I say, liking Indian culture does not, meaning subcontinental Indian culture, does not make you an open-minded person. It just means you enjoy those particular things, and that's fine. But so don't expect it to be a politics of itself. So we have a lot of diversity in a lot of our culture, more so than many places. Not talking about West Marin, obviously, and we have a lot of tolerance, right? We tolerate other people, but we have very little equality, and we're not very interested in equality. And so
I'm hanging up now, by the way.
Are you that upset with what? How dare you?
I can hear you out here, so I don't need to block the line.
Thank you, Lion.
I think she's deliberately turning her back to me now. I can tell this is a personal.
Of course, her name is actually pronounced Lyon. Borrowing. I was talking about what's her name, Katy Perry wearing the
commodification.
The commodification, and Miley Cyrus twerking. Twerking.
Oh dear!
It's
but
not
nobody
a
should be
white girl
twerking.
thing to do. That's a street dance that was happening, and an African dance actually. It's taken from Africa. Yeah,
these people. The real story is that all pop culture is horrible, except for brief moment in the 1920s and 30s.
And she had to, and it says on stage as well as in her video, she used the tedious trope of having black women as her backing singers there only to be fondled by her and to admire her wiggling derriere.
Well, I mean, so what do you? I mean, it's always been. I mean, is it worse now? I mean, pop culture has always been pretty stupid. It's about diversion. It's about entertainment. It isn't very deep. And for Americans, it doesn't really refer to any deep tradition. Now, you think about why pretending that you are a poor a person from Appalachia in the 1920s and 30s, right? The 30s in particular. I mean, no reference to my checked shirt here. And playing all these songs about how poor we are and got no more teeth anymore, hon, and all that crap. These people all went to Reed College, mind you, but they're pretending they're poor people from 80 years ago on the other side of the country.
Because they like the music.
Well, you could say they like the music, or they're attempting, a displaced people as we are, people with so lightly rooted in any particular place, and always removing ourselves from this place and going on from, I've got to go to Oaxaca, I won't be okay.
You are an equal opportunity offender.
Oh, everyone, yes. But so what they want, you can understand what they want. They want authenticity. They want an association with the land. They want sorrow. They want to be processing sorrow and difficulty and blah, 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 blah. But they do it in this really cheesy American way. I mean, I don't know.
And then, that is American music.
It is American. It's not West Coast music.
And then there's the business appropriation of certain things. I found this today. There was a restaurant review of a thing called Dao in Hollywood.
Oh, that's great.
And it's worse than we imagined is the line, and it's things like deep fried sushi and it's all awful. It's really bad food and super expensive, and of course celebrities are going there. But Dao, T-A-O, the Dao Group, is suing Chinese restaurants all over the U.S. and probably elsewhere because they're an international consortium. They have restaurants in New York City, Las Vegas, Sydney, L.A. They're suing all these Chinese restaurants that have Dao in their name because they have trademarked the Dao.
Well, about 10 years ago, there was an article in...
and by the way, there's 3 Jewish guys and 1 white guy.
That's it.
Running the place.
We know.
Not an Asian to be seen.
Well, there was a great article, I think, in the New Republic that was called Dow Jones.
Quit picking on the Jews.
That's right.
Yeah, just saying.
Well, the Dow Jones thing I loved, which is how you can be mindful and center yourself while you're raping the world. And it's extraordinary.
Exactly.
But the thing is, if you want culture, then you have to, and you want actually meaningful politics, you have to stay in one place for a long time.
And I think,
but we want to be global travelers.
Well, there it is.
We want to just go everywhere all the time.
The sad part about cultural appropriation around the world is that, as somebody said, other cultures are appropriating American culture, whatever that means, which is globalization, capitalism,
the diet,
the horrible diet, the fast food restaurants, because it's cool. And
but it strikes
Japan,
me
for example.
It strikes me, though, that somebody who's appropriating something might be appropriating something that has already been appropriated.
Well, indeed, they have. So,
what do you mean by
that? The English language, for example, people. I had an encounter. Why not just say? What do I care? I was wearing a dashiki, my dashiki.
And, cultural appropriation. I always do this at its finest.
I always do this with a certain amount of irony. I don't do this in any kind of serious way. I love Nigerian culture. It really centers me. No, it does not.
I don't know if irony makes it better.
It actually probably doesn't, because not only are you stealing, you're laughing at it at the same time.
Exactly.
But so I was talking to a young African American man, and he was he thought he wasn't upset, but he was like, that's whatever, cultural appropriation. I said, well, okay, what about English? And he looked at me and said, well, I didn't choose to speak English. I said, okay, that's fair, but I want those jeans. Take the jeans off, because that's got nothing to do with slavery, buddy. I want the jeans. He didn't give me the jeans, but then I didn't take the dashiki off either. So I don't know. I think it's all just kind of.
So America owns Levi.
Well, sure. I mean, are we going to play that game, I guess?
Well, no, blue jeans...
are we going to play... Okay, so...
denim came from somewhere else. That's denim, it's French.
Maybe.
Denim.
I've got French.
Indigo.
Indigo came from... It was used in China.
Well, I thought indigo was an
Oh, it could be, yeah.
So, but I guess my point would be the what defines English culture, meaning British culture, which is this empire upon which the United States was modeled, but also a parliamentary system upon which the United States was modeled, was invasions. The English were repeatedly invaded. Angles, Saxons, Jutes, attacking those Portal Picts, and then Normans, a profound change.
Romans?
Romans even before that. So they are a developing empire that was receiving these invasions, was being subjugated, was being sort of humiliated. It's a tradition that almost all people in the world participate in. So you have to think about this. Do I resent, as an Irish person, a person with Irish ancestry, the fact that I'm also a person of English ancestry? Is there a war going on inside me?
Well, of course there is. But
but I just think, where do you draw the line with that?
I resent the appropriation by Americans of Marmite. Oh, that's never happened.
That is
that's
never.
Right.
You mean Australians? You mean Australians?
No, that's Vegemite. Right.
Oh, it's got to be the same.
It strikes me also that this is a peculiar American process. Do other countries talk about appropriation?
It's a concern of Americans.
Well, because we follow the imperial armies on our vacations, right? We follow the British Army all over the Indian subcontinent, and we follow American armies all over Asia. We follow British armies in Africa.
But they're not soul-searching the way we are.
They think they are, and that's the problem. But what they're really doing is it's therapy for feelings of being out of control, feelings of placelessness, of rootlessness. And so I hate that is spiritualized. If you have a feeling of anomie, of normlessness, of placelessness, then that's a question that you can get into and you can deal with that anxiety. But instead, we simply treat the symptom, which is very curious because the problem of placelessness, the psychological condition, is nostalgia, feeling separate or feeling for your original place. How do we treat this nostalgia? By traveling more. So I think we're caught in a positive feedback loop, and my hope is about 90% of West Marin's heads are going to explode in the next 3 years, and then more housing options will be available.
Oh, there's a good earthquake. Do call.
Earthquake works too.
415, we still have a few minutes. 415-663-8492. Give us a call. Tell us about your thoughts about cultural appropriation. What is appropriation? What's appropriate appropriation? What is not appropriate appropriation? What is assimilation? What is just the melding of cultures? Chop suey, an American invention.
Oh, right. Well, we're a frontier culture. We're a pioneer culture. We still have that, like, people think they need to go away from home at a certain point. Now, older traditional cultures, people stayed in the same basic place for dozens of generations. But we have this expectation of a displacement. You've got to go someplace else. And that is a part of an imperial mentality of going out and grabbing a little more land here.
Well, it's ingrained in the American mindset.
Well, and we've only come to its disappointment in really the last 50 years, which is the West.
We have an obligation to do it under manifest destiny.
Exactly. That's right. No, but that's, as I say, a part of this spirit, this frontier thing that we do, which is about going to other places and taking other people's stuff. And finally, with the end of the West, which really happened, say, in 1900, although we're only dealing with the consequences now, there's no more stuff to take. So we have to deal with who we are.
Caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please? Keep it clean.
My name's David. I'll try and keep it clean.
Keep it clean, man.
Yes, I will. A serious cultural violation that I'm still outraged about. Every once in a while I hear it, but everybody thought it was so wonderful at the time, was what I call disco pygmy. There was some pygmy chants.
What?
That it was, 20-plus years ago, pygmy chants that were recorded, and then there was some disco music put over it, and it was like this billed as this synthesis, this beautiful meld of some, I guess, African culture, pygmy music, and then over it, and it was... I know that there are people, if you have any listeners besides me and Lions and a few others. Sorry.
The entire county is listening.
Indeed.
I know that there are some people whose heads are exploding right now.
I hope.
Yeah.
Can you get addresses? There's going to be a lot of cleanup. But
anyway, I just wanted to put that in. I don't have a whole lot to add, but it's a very entertaining show.
So this was a disco. So they were mixing in tribal chants, which who knows what they were really about.
It was called Jungle Dream or something
Oh
like
boy.
that.
They're forest people.
Forest
they
people,
don't
yeah.
live in the jungle.
The name that was given the album might not have anything to do with the pigs themselves. But this is the thing. We want the power of the local. We want the power of place. And so we're always grabbing at it in many ways. And West Burnaby like that because a lot of it's self-presentation, not to say self-conception, because can people really believe this about themselves after they get off the airplane for the 6th time that year? Is that this is local, this is place, this is small, this is beautiful. It just isn't. But we desire it so much. We really want it to be. But
I don't think it's a peculiar American phenomenon either. I think it's been going on for thousands of years, as long as people have been talking. And I'm going to sign off the air right now. But
Thank you,
Probably
David.
true. Thank you, Dave.
did it feel like I've been talking for thousands of years? Is that what he said?
It seems
It's only been about 56 minutes. But that's the thing is if you want those things to be real, well, then those are big questions and difficult questions. But if you want the sensation of them, well, yeah, go buy some music that'll give you,
Ale Fakaturi. People love that.
yeah, go get it,
Yeah, well,
put a djembe on your head.
Unfortunately, I was, as David was talking about that, I was thinking about Peter Gabriel, who I really enjoy his music, but he went through a period there where he was introducing Ali Farka Toure and the Pakistani singer and all these other drummers from other countries. He was introducing them, and he actually paid them. He actually put them on tour. He brought them over to England to Glastonbury and the Real World Festival, I think it was. So he was good with them. He actually used it as part of the mix, but he was very honorable about it.
Well, the thing is, it's if we're talking about entertaining ourselves and diverting ourselves, it's perfect. I was at Arthur and Susan Walenta's 50th wedding anniversary at the faculty club down in Berkeley a couple of weeks ago, and there's a wedding going on next door. And it's got a lot of klezmer music. Oh, okay, klezmer music, that's fine. And then after the klezmer music was Fela Kuti. And I knew the song, and I can remember the feeling of being a teenager and hearing Fela Kuti for the first time and going, wow, that's different and cool. But as time has gone by, I see the way in which people use maybe music in particular in our culture as a therapy, as a distraction, as a way of escaping that is not entirely healthy. I mean, it can be, but there's something weird going on there. So the first time I heard it, my teens were like, oh, that's pretty amazing. But hearing it in my 30s, I'm just like, okay, really?
Well, it's because you've heard it before. What if you were a teenager now and you heard Fela Kuti for the first time?
I guess the thing is that this is
you
why
might say, I want to play like him.
This is the way he had. He had a 27-piece band, and he had many dozens of wives, and did not believe that he was could even get AIDS because he was a sexual god. He was an interesting cat. He did die of AIDS. But the problem was that it isn't as we think of knowledge or experience leading through some kind of maturity to a different way of viewing and understanding the world. It is merely entertainment. And yes, you do need to hear new things continually in order to maintain that feeling of distraction and otherness, and yes, a bit of the sublime as well. But the sublime
I just want to catch one note. Charles used the word not healthy, not altogether healthy.
Yeah.
I just want, I don't know, coming from Charles.
What is that supposed to mean?
Oh, okay.
I don't smoke because I think I'm the
another
Marlboro
show.
Man.
Okay, folks. Thank you very much, both of you, and everyone who called in, and all our listeners, of course. We're going out with Bonzo Dog. Can Blue Men Sing the Whites? Thanks. See you next Thursday.